that all electronic devices be turned off at this time, and we remind you that eating, drinking, and smoking are not permitted in the auditorium. The use of flash photography, video, and other recording devices is not permitted without prior approval. Please take a moment to find your nearest emergency exits, which are identified by green exit signs. These exits will be used in the event of a fire or other emergency and are located either through the lobby doors or backstage via stairs on the left or right side of the stage. Thank you for joining us and enjoy today's event.
We have props today. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see a full house. Hi, everybody up there. Michael Shermer here. Glad to see you all. I am the publisher of this magazine, SCEPTIC magazine. It's the quarterly publication of the, quarterly publication of the SCEPTIC Society. We're a 501c3 nonprofit science education organization, and we think science rocks, as apparently you do too. So we do these events at Caltech here once a month or so, and we have some upcoming events. For example, next month, February 8th, actually 2 weeks from today, all these events will be over at Baxter Lecture Hall, where we normally hold our events across the grass. This is by some guy. Oh, that's me. Anyway, thanks. So this is my new book, The Moral Arc. I heard that they have copies out there. Anyway, so I'll be actually doing the full-on lecture in 2 weeks on that. Been on a book tour for the last week, so I'm pretty much practiced on that one. And then the next month, Sunday, March 29th, we have Susan Pinker on the village effect, how face-to-face contact can make us healthier and happier. Susan Pinker is Steven Pinker's sister. They're both psychologists, and so that's pretty cool. And then Sunday, April 9th, Phil Zuckerman is he's the first professor of secular studies ever out at Pitzer College and at the Claremont Colleges, and his book is Living the Secular Life. He's the guy that collects all the data on the nuns, not the Catholic ones, but the N-O-N-E-S, the people that check the box for no religious preference at all, which is now 20% of all Americans. It's about almost 30% of, yep. So he'll actually be talking about his data on secularists and nuns and who they are and what we think and so forth. Sunday, May 3rd, Beth Shapiro, How to Clone a Mammoth, because, you know, everybody should have one. The science of de-extinction, this is actual, you know, serious research on how to bring back extinct species like the passenger pigeon and mammoths and so forth. I'm not sure where you'd put them. Maybe Canada or something like that. If Canada gets warmer, well, maybe that's not so good. I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting genetic research, whether they actually pull it off or not. And then finally, Sunday, May 17th, Leonard Mlodinow. He's the co-author with Stephen Hawking of The Grand Design, which most of you probably read. So his new book is The Upright Thinkers, The Human Journey from Living in Trees to Understanding the Cosmos. It's a big history, big science type book, which is a nice setup for our conference. We're having a conference the weekend of May 29th through 31st. That's not the Memorial Day weekend, in case you have travel plans. It's the weekend after that. So this is, I titled this In the Year 2525. For those of you that are roughly my age, you'll know that reference. Big science, big history, and the far future of humanity. I got to thinking about this when I was writing the last chapter of The Moral Arc, like what's the future of the moral future of humanity and so forth. And then I delved into that a little bit and realized there's people that do this for a living. They look at future long-term trends over the past to project into the future. So we're starting Friday night, May 29th, with a dinner party with the speakers. I got a couple of magicians coming to, you know, take your watches and stuff like that. At the Westin is the host hotel there, and then talks all day on Saturday with scientists, historians, and futurists. We posted this graphic, by the way, on our webpage. We got a lot of email from people going, well, what is that, like a black hole or something? And, well, if you want to know what it is, just look up. It is a black hole. So we have Jared Diamond, the historian that wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, Collapse in the World Before Yesterday. Lawrence Krauss, the great cosmologist and popular science writer. Carol Tavris, the psychologist. John McWhorter is going to talk about what language we'll be speaking in a century from now or 500 years from now. Just think about how much English has changed in 500 years past, what we'll be speaking then. Ian Morris is a historian who does history of civilization based on energy consumption. What kind of fuels do you use to generate the energy you need to have a civilization, and what does that mean going forward if we run out of fossil fuels? Greg Benford and David Brin are both physicists and science fiction writers, so they're actually the pros at projecting what things might be like 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now. You're probably familiar with the Long Now Foundation and their clock they're building out in the desert that lasts 10,000 years, and it dongs like once every 10 years or something. That's the kind of thing, just thinking in the long term. Donald Prothero, our geologist, paleontologist, who's here. He's going to bring a little reality check to all of this, like, are we even going to make it to a century at the rate we're going with the fossil fuel consumption, global warming, and so on? In other words, a reality check on the kind of stuff we're doing for the environment. Esther Dyson is the author of a number of books on the internet, the future of the internet, the future of the web and online and computers and artificial intelligence, and this whole debate about to what extent will artificial intelligence become evil and have no use for us anymore. I'm not particularly worried about it, but it's good to have somebody who does think about those things a lot. And then on Sunday, in case you want to stick around for the weekend, we have two events. The Protheros are going to lead a geo tour of the San Gabriel Mountains, and you can dive into the San Andreas Fault there. So that's an all-day trip, and basically up into the San Gabriel Mountains, up Angeles Forest, and so on, and look at all the great road cuts that does some good geology. Or as a second option, or if that one fills up, Mount Wilson tour to see the telescopes that Edwin Hubble used. That's the cluster of telescopes there. You can see the two solar telescopes to the left, the 60-inch telescope in the middle, and the top is the 100-inch telescope that Hubble used there in the middle picture. That's him sitting there on his bentwood chair, which is still sitting there. You can't sit in it, but it's there. It's just kind of cool. It's like going into a church or something, and there's the holy relic, except it's real. Anyway. And then we have a geo tour coming up this summer, our most ambitious one to date. So I'll have Donald Prothero come up and tell you a little bit about that. Don?
Thank you, Michael. We just came back from a really outstanding geo tour last weekend. For those who are in the audience who were with us, it came out very, very well. Got lucky with the weather, and everything worked just as I had hoped it worked. And I am running the trip, as you saw mentioned, on May 31st. We'll do the day trip up to Vasquez Rocks and Devil's Punch Bowl, and then over the San Gabriels. But we thought we'd do something a little different this time. We already tried a trip all the way up to Alaska and back, and that worked pretty well. So now we're even trying farther afield. So we're shooting for 2016 now, not this coming summer, but summer after this. And hopefully the dollar will be strong against the pound still by then. We hope to get our prices nailed down at least. And notice it's a SCEPTIC with a C trip, because you have to spell it British when you go there. We pretty much nailed down the dates. A little flexibility still, but we have a number of people who are bidding on it to give us the best possible price. This is roughly 2 weeks from late July of 2016. England, Scotland, and Wales in around 15, 16 days. We'll see how many it takes when it's all settled out. And includes just about everything but lunches, which you'll do when you want to find out where lunch is. Local villages will let you loose. And some of the dinners will be included, some you'll be on your own, but everything else is pretty much included. Your lodging, your bus and everything, and they will have the travel company that runs it for us will have their own native British guide, so they will know how to get around, and they will do most of the heavy lifting that we used to do. And so there'll be lots of stuff, and the major thing will be it's going to be a very different kind of trip. You cannot find any equivalent trip like this anywhere in any tour company, because we're going to custom design it for what our audience likes. It'll be especially focused on history of science and natural history. That includes a lot of historic sites where much of science was born in Britain, and also especially geology and paleontology, my field. I'm going to focus on that, and a lot of natural history as well. And just to give you a taste of some of the places we're talking about, some are standard tourist sites, so sure, we're going to let you loose in London to go on the London Eye or whatever you enjoy. But we'll also see natural history museums. We'll go to sites that have great importance as well. So there you see Stonehenge, for example, and Loch Ness. We'll definitely do the cruise on Loch Ness, get your chance to see the monster. And Up in the upper right there, when we get to Edinburgh, we'll look at sites not only associated with the history of geology and James Hutton, but also David Hume, basically the modern founder of skepticism, who was a Scottish philosopher, and also Adam Smith, the founder of modern capitalism. They were all drinking buddies, by the way. They all lived at the same time in the same place in Edinburgh. I will focus on the geology through the whole trip, as I usually do when I run these tours. And we're going to be running a tour running pretty much all across Britain in 16 days, all the way from down by London, all the way out to Cornwall and back out again, up through Wales and then across to Scotland at the end. So you're going to see just about a complete cross-section of Britain at least twice, including classic sites like on the right there, the White Cliffs at Dover, and the famous unconformity that Hutton used to see the abyss of time there in the upper right. And then as a paleontologist, much of my field began in Britain first, so we're going to see things like, this is on the left here, the very famous reconstructions in the 1850s done by Waterhouse Hawkins, the very first physical reconstructions of dinosaurs ever done, back when I thought iguanodon was like a big lizard and not like a two-legged creature. And all these early ideas about dinosaurs. These are still sitting in a park and outside in the London suburbs. We'll go to the famous fossil localities of Mary Anning Haunted on the Dorset coast at Lyme Regis, where Ammonites literally pave the low tide, and we'll hit it at low tide so we can see that. And of course, it wouldn't be complete without visiting the places where a lot of science was born in the literal sense. So we're going to see Darwin's birthplace at Shrewsbury. We're going to see Darwin's house in Down, which is in the southeast suburbs of London, the upper left there now, and it's maintained as a museum in his honor. We'll see Isaac Newton's house in the lower left, which is pretty much where most of his great work was done. He didn't work very much. His great discoveries were made during the years he avoided Cambridge because of the plague, and he made them at home. And then on the upper right there, one of the many sites associated with Alfred Russel Wallace. So we're going to be looking at history of science as well as natural history. So we don't know the price yet. We'll know it probably in a couple more weeks as soon as we start getting bids from these various tour companies come back to us. We'll announce it through the SCEPTIC and through our usual email list in probably a month or so. And it's only going to be about 40 slots on the bus, so it's going to be sold out pretty quick. So if you're interested, keep it in mind. We'll try to make it widely announced as quickly as we can. Thank you.
I forgot to mention one other thing. Thanks to text, my wife texted me in the back there and said, you forgot to mention Frankie. So Frankie Moreno on the bottom left there is our Vegas show that we have, and he's coming here to do his rock and roll show right here on this stage. So we're trying to get skeptics, you know, and a little rock and roll music is good for the entertainment there. So that's kind of cool. Thank you. Now, you're probably wondering what this is all about. I'm going to let Bill explain that to you. But of course, this is Deflate Gate. Apparently, there's some science behind what the pressure should be when it's best to catch a ball or not when it's cold. I'm going to let the science guy explain that to you. But I did want to share one thing with you. First, the logistics of today. So Bill's going to do a short presentation. He's worked up about global warming. Turns out there's a lot of people that don't believe it. It's hard to believe. No, so take that down. Okay, yep, sorry. Yeah, sorry, there we go. And, yep, sorry. I was just in Washington, D.C. on my book tour, so my tour guide person took me to Congress to meet some representatives because she thought that they needed some assistance on, bringing them up to speed on some of the science, because these are congressmen on some science committees. Do you suppose we visited Democrats or Republicans? So these are all Republicans that were doubtful of climate change and evolution and so on. So Bill is going to talk a little bit about that. It is a serious concern to talk about that. So he's going to do that for a few minutes and talk about his debate with Ken Ham. And he just brought me this book that Ken Ham himself is publishing called Inside the Nye-Ham Debate. And it's autographed for Bill. I'll read it to you. Here's earnestly hoping you find the way, all caps, someday you would be welcome to the world of the redeemed, which means he's in what world now? The unredeemed? We could celebrate the creation together. John 14:6. They just can't stop quoting scripture even in a book signature. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Ken Ham, January 6, 2015. Well, okay, he's a good sport about it. But so we're also going to talk a little bit about that today, and then we're going to do a little in-conversation here about books. Bill's really important book, Undeniable. We have quite a few copies here. So after the in-conversation, we'll take some of your questions at the 2 microphones here. And then when we're done with that, you can line up here and come on stage to get your signature on Bill's book and get your selfie with him or whatever it is you want to do on that. And so with that, of course, you wouldn't be here in such droves if you didn't know who Bill Nye the Science Guy was. But you should also know, just in case you're not aware of this, that he is the executive director of the Planetary Society, the largest private planetary society in the world, and they're really doing some important things about the future of humanity is in space for sure, and we need a lot of advocates for that. So that's Bill's day job. They're right here in Pasadena, and so he splits his time here in New York doing a lot of television work. And so with that, of course, help me welcome Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Thank you. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Greetings. Oh, I love you, man. Wow, I haven't said anything yet. No, it's great. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow. Wow, you're my people. Any questions on what we've covered so far? So here, let's just turn this on. This whole thing started, and by this whole thing, I mean, here we go. Yeah. With a thing I did on Big Think. And I don't know if the kids, the young people, you probably know the Big Think. It's on the electric computer that the kids use. And I made an offhanded remark. I'd gotten there. I was in New York City, so I had to get up at 5:30, which is 2:30, Western time. And I was tired, but I wasn't disciplined, perhaps. But it was heartfelt. I said, don't let your kids grow up to be creationists, because we need them to solve problems. No, I'm not joking. We need young people to go to Caltech and develop the better way to desalinate seawater without using so much energy, so that we can have a better future for all humankind, raising the standard of living of girls and women so that the human population naturally decreases, and so on. Well, but thank you. But just notice, as of yesterday, almost 7 million views. In other words, there's 7 million people who've got nothing else to do but watch this. And along that line, I did this debate with Ken Ham. Now, he heard about this from Big Think, or his people, his staff heard about it from Big Think. If you don't know who Ken Ham is, he's a preacher, he's a minister that has a ministry, he calls it, called Answers in Genesis, which is in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and he's Australian. And are there any Australian people here? Really? How about anybody who naturally has a British accent? I mean, for real. Yeah, there you go. Do you find that people from the U.S. think you know more than the rest of us because you got a British accent? Yeah. So I often wonder, full disclosure, by the way, I just noticed that's Liam Kennedy, who is a big, strong supporter of the Planetary Society. Way to go. Tomorrow in the New York Times will be a big announcement. And Liam is going to be, I hope, intimately involved with the near future. It's going to be huge. It's going to be so huge. So, okay, so Answers in Genesis finds out about this. They write me a letter. We go back and forth. We agree on a debate topic. Is creationism a viable model in today's scientific world? Viable was the key word. I know, of course, I'm saying, well, no. But as of last night, 3.9, almost 4 million views. Now, it's been online less than a year, whereas the other Big Think thing has been on 2 years, 2.5 years. So, I don't know, how many people saw this or heard about it? Yeah, I love you guys. I love you. So I think I made some points that were very strong. And his were not especially. But I just want you to know why it's important, or why it's important to me. It wouldn't matter if we had some extraordinary people who live outside of the mainstream and consider this a religious business that they're in, and they really are out to save people and spend their intellect and treasure doing that. But understand that really in the back, or the basis, or the thing that they work very hard at Answers in Genesis, is indoctrinating young people, indoctrinating science students. These look like science tests, right? You get the Tyrannosaurus, the Stegosaurus, here's electricity, a clumped particle, a changed particle, the potential in circuits with multiple paths. This looks like science, right? There's an AND gate, so on. But in the back of all that, and the Earth is 6,000 years old, which is not true. So just to give you an idea, this was a news story that ran in Cincinnati television just a few weeks ago, and they got this kid coming into he has a facility, a building there, called the Creation Museum. Now, for me, a museum has artifacts, right? It has things from the past that you would that you go, wow, that's really the chair that Edwin Hubble was sitting in. Have you guys ever been to Mount Wilson? I was there, yeah, with a guy named Frank Jastrow, who's kind of a character. And yeah, Bill, the cell phones don't work very well here. There's a payphone over there, and I like Coke. There's a Coke machine, and that's the chair that Hubble was sitting when he discovered the Big Bang. Anyway, it's like, what did you say? What, dude? What did you say? That was quite a moment. It was the Science Guy show days. But in this museum, there are no artifacts. It's just robots and stuff. You may not have known that ancient dinosaurs were all vegetarians until 6,000 years ago. And so if you got a kid, look at his face. He's like excited. Wow, that's really cool. My parents believe this. This is really great. But it turns out it's really not right. But the next day, all over the internet, the electric internet the kids use, was this picture. And just to tell you, this is from Tennessee, but it's just it's not far south of where, I mean, if you really wanted to go, it's no trouble to get there from this county. And just look at this car. It's a family vehicle, and it has a clear depiction of, they got a lot of Bible quotes, but they also, it's probably, for kids and soccer moms and stuff like that. So when you're raising children with this, that's when I claim it's not in anybody's best interest. Because we're going to have serious, serious problems in the coming decades with climate change, and we need as many scientifically literate voters as possible, scientifically literate citizens, and especially engineers, to change the world. So the whole thing was really crystallized for me by a question that came from the audience. What, if anything, would ever change your mind? And I don't know if you guys, how much of the debate you were able to sit through, but seriously, it was, you guys, I'm an actor, and you really had to concentrate. Ken Ham says really extraordinary things that are completely out of, how else to describe it? They're ludicrous, and he just keeps going. And so as you may recall, I went, if we found one fossil swimming between the layers in the Grand Canyon, frozen in time, trying to escape or if there was some way to get giant boulders on top of the ground in Washington State and Oregon, not caused by an ancient flood, but by some deity who thought they belonged there. If you had some way to get light from stars, which are more than 6,000 light years away here, in less than 6,000, if you had that figured out, then we could take a meeting. But his thing, if you recall, was, I have a book. I have a book. And that was the end of it for him. And I found out later who wrote the question. It's a gal who does Friendly Atheist, Teresa Moody. It was really cool. So I met her at Vanderbilt University several months later. It was really, really cool. But anyway, that really was the thing. This is from their Answers in Genesis website. And it just, some in blue, you might recognize Dwayne Gish, who was famed for doing the Gish Gallop, where he introduced one thing after another, one thing after another. And it said, I know it's hard to read things in a room like this, but Bill Nye's tactic even mentioned that he was to throw a bunch of data at Ken Ham, knowing that he would never have time to respond. Yeah, I guess. It wasn't really a bunch of data. It was sort of a series of arguments that, you know, if you have a snow cycle and a summer cycle every year in, say, Greenland, so you get a layer of ice, and there are over 600,000 layers of ice, then in 6,000 years you need 170 snow winter cycles, which didn't happen. Somebody would have noticed that, you know. But my favorite one here is elephant hurling. Bill Nye's debate strategy was nothing more than elephant hurling. Okay, is there anybody from South Africa? I have spent time on television, I admit, really close to elephants. I just don't see how I would hurl them. So I'm going to write to him and ask him what that's about. Then the other thing I was going to say is we have an extraordinary number of climate deniers here in the US. And so if you're from anywhere else in the world, your government, your citizens are, at least where I've traveled, I'm not like, I'm sure a few of you in here, but I've been around the world a little bit. Everybody talks about climate change. This is what they talk about. This is what they're worried about. This is what they're concerned about. What are we going to do about climate change? Negotiating with climate change. And especially, what are we going to do about the United States and climate change? That's what people talk about. No, really, in the rest of the world. And so along with this, Ken Ham is a climate change denier. So he is raising as many people as he can, introducing the idea that climate change is not real. And so this is dangerous. I mean, at some point, I admit, I thought it was charming that these guys can live their lives using this extraordinary technology, but completely out of touch with how it all got here. But he's actually, this is leaving the world worse than you found it. So I just want to talk some more about me. I go back. I just want to point out that I go back with climate change over 20 years. I've been talking about climate change for over 20 years. And, but Bill, it's still a problem. You failed, I know. I have, but just for the record, I go back a long way on this. Now, Ken Ham, this is back when, Piers Morgan, if you remember this guy, he was a very well-respected newscaster from Britain who has a real British accent. And he was taken off the air because he would not stop talking about gun violence in the United States. He just wouldn't let go. Anyway, but before that, I was on his show right after the debate, and this is the moment where Ken Ham denying climate change after Piers Morgan asked him about it, and I just like this one freeze frame where I go, actually, I got to tell you, you're denying what you're already denying. So it just got to stop you right there. And that night, it snowed like crazy in Cincinnati. And we drove back to the hotel with a couple of Answers in Genesis security people. And they have the curly thing, the Secret Service earpiece in. And they did not say a word. We're an hour and a half in the car. They didn't say a word. Because they, can we say ass here? I kicked their boss's ass, and so they were there they were. So just keep in mind that we'll sit down in a minute, but the Answers in Genesis people have not let up. They have a lot of technology, huge Facebook presence, huge Twitter thing. I guess I haven't checked, but I'm sure they have Instagram, Snapchat, and all that going on. And they're advertising for a programmer. And there's a job opening, job number 109. Visual Studio, for those of you familiar with some software, familiar with Agile, Scrum, and Plus, experience with is a plus. Experience with SQL servers 2008 and is a plus. Apply for this position, and when you do, you have to have a proven firmness in one's walk with Christ. Thessalonians, some of the heart of servant that works diligently and seeks to defer. Okay, just a couple things here. First of all, when in this debate, I'm not an expert on the Bible, as I'm sure you're aware, but it wasn't that flood and everything in the Old Testament? Wasn't that before Jesus showed up? I mean, he keeps tying that in. I mean, just let me say theologically. But the other thing is they very much hope to get tax dollars from Kentucky, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, to support their Ark Park, which is the new museum, and a new facility. It's going to be a replica of Noah's Ark. Yeah, sure. You can buy a plank and stuff, and so they will be taking tax credit from the Commonwealth. And along with this, here's a clearly religious message. You cannot be gay, you cannot be homosexual and apply for a job there. So this is, to us on the outside, a clear violation of the Constitution. And so you'd expect it to get, short shrift. But they are pushing forward. They are not letting up, man. They really believe that they have the right idea. And so the billboards are up on the main freeway around Cincinnati. Thank God you can't sink the ship. And they're fighting the fight. They put this, in other words, they're spending the dollars from their constituents or parishioners or from the ministry members to put up billboards like this. Here in the United States, where people invent iPhones and make 787s and get Nobel Prizes in chemistry, we got these guys doing this. It really is a remarkable thing. And to those of you who might not be from the U.S., I don't get it either. So, anyway, this is from their website just a couple days ago. And they believe what they have is pitching everybody else in the world as their enemy. So, to this end, I was writing a book about climate change for St. Martin's Press, which is, I'm just telling you, it's a real company. Like, it's not Bill just messing around with his HP printer. It's like a real company. I'm writing a book about climate change. And after that debate, which I thought would be, you guys, seriously, I thought it would be a college gig, which I enjoy. I thought I'd go to college, a campus, we'd do some tweeting, it'd be fun. A few people would show up and then we'd move on. It's got 4 million views and the thing that led to it 7 million views. And so the publisher insisted that I change what I was doing. And so I wrote it in last spring. And look at this guy, man. He will mess you up, all right? Just like, he's serious. I don't know, not really sure how we got that picture. It was in a photography studio in New York City. Anyway, along this line, you guys, I don't want you to feel ripped off, okay, for those of you who bought my book. I used to work on a drawing board. I used to have a job, all right? I used to be a productive member of society. And I made sketches for the book. And I thought they would hire like real, sketch person, woman, guy, person. But no, we'll just put them in just like that. Whoa, okay. So anyway, for you controversy buffs, I have decided that the viruses deserve their own domain of life. And I'm sure there's a few of you who are going to get in a fist fight with me about this but whatever it is, the viruses I don't think are concerned with how we rig them up. But the importance of this can't be, not the virus, but the importance of evolution can't be overstated. And people say, well, Bill, what do you know? You're a mechanical engineer. You're a kid show host. What do you know about evolution? And my answer is enough, okay? What's in the book, it's a primer. It's a primer on evolution. And it's these fundamental ideas that I feel everybody should know about. And when it comes to things that affect public health especially, I just want to remind you all that Ebola is a result of evolution. We would not be dealing with this if viruses and bacteria didn't change with time. So with that, I just want to thank you all very much for coming. And now Michael will grill me with some insightful questions. Thank you very much. Do I sit over here?
So we start with the, what's the story?
Oh yeah, so I was riding my bike. What was I doing? My business. And I have, you guys have a level in life where I have a publicist. Okay, he calls me on my bicycle. I feel the phone vibrate. And call him. So ABC wanted to do a story about inflation gate or deflate gate.
Deflate gate, yeah.
Yeah, deflate gate. So if you haven't heard the story, hey, look, okay, you can hate football, you can hate the principle of it, you can hate people, you can hate athletes, you can hate me, you can hate everything, all right? But the Super Bowl is a big deal, all right? And I say that financially, it's an important thing, right? So apparently the New England Patriots have routinely, or at least recently, kept the footballs a little bit less inflated than is regulation, by about 15%. So I was on my bike, I was on Mulholland Drive, I rode home, and we got a couple of balloons and put, with a Sharpie, I put laces on them, and showed that it's easier to grab a smaller object than a big one. And by the way, this ruse, or this rule bending was discovered by a defensive player from the Indianapolis Colts who intercepted a ball. He's not the guy intended to catch the ball. And he says to the referee, "What do you think, man?" And so they realized that New England had been underinflating the ball. So watch how easy they are to grab. Just show you. See, when you can squeeze it, then you can like catch it one-handed. And so this is a breaking of the rules. It's cheating. New England overwhelmed Indianapolis in that game. But you got to wonder if it wouldn't have been different if they hadn't been so demoralized in the first half, blah, blah, blah. And then, full disclosure, you guys, okay, out of engineering school, I got a job at Boeing. I worked on 747, and I lived in Seattle for 26 years. And what I always say is I was in Seattle when Seattle came of age. I know there are Yankee fans everywhere, but in 1995, the Mariners beat the Mariners are a baseball team. Beat the New York Yankees, and it was a big deal. And now Seattle, has this reputation for having a 12th man on the field, which is the crowd. The city is so insane for this football team. So I just had to tell ABC News, go Seahawks! Yeah, so now you guys, for you drama buffs, now we have this dynasty team, the New England Patriots, who've won 3 times and almost 6 times, and we have this underdog team, the Seattle Seahawks, and now not only that, the dynasty team is a villain. They're cheaters. So at least watch the first half. Okay? All right. Michael, there's more to it than that, I take it.
Well, we want to talk about your book, but I thought we'd go back in time a little bit and just talk about how Bill goes from Bill, the engineer at Boeing, to Bill Nye, the science guy, and what was it like to be the student of Carl Sagan?
So everybody, I took one class from Carl Sagan. No, but it's not insignificant. I took one class, Solar System 102, because I'd satisfied all my engineering requirements and I could take electives. So as a senior in college, I took a freshman course. And by the way, I went to Cornell University, which is a very well-respected school, but how in the world did I get into Cornell University? I mean, these people are so smart. And I was just like, oh, cool, I go to astronomy class, great. Anyway, the guy was all that, as the kids say. He was quite the lecturer. He's really influential. And the paper I wrote for him, I got an A on from Steve Soder, who was Carl Sagan's
grad student,
postdoc or whatever it was at that time. And if you're scoring along with us, Steve Soder was one of the writers on the remake of Cosmos. So he was a writer on the original Cosmos and the new Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson. So he pointed out to me the other day that I remind him that he gave me an A every time I see him.
He gave you the A.
Well, he awarded me an A.
Yes, yes.
I earned an A because I wrote a paper about Kirlian photography. Does anybody remember this? Mm-hmm. With digital cameras, this may not be as fresh in your conscious, but there was a technique where charlatans would take your picture with a Polaroid usually, and then while they took the film out of the camera, they'd smooth it with their thumb and hand it to you, and then you would get this cool color aura around your head. And that was one very popular technique. And then there's also a thing called, just in physics or in science, called a corona discharge. It gives off sparks, either visually, optical sparks, or just an electric field that will influence film. So you can zzz the film, and it will film. I'm sorry, film. It was a technique for capturing photographic images.
Chemicals,
don't worry about it. It's a
emulsion.
long story, obviously. But anyway, and the guy, for astronomy class, for a class nominally about the solar system, I wrote a paper about skepticism, about critical thinking. And that was Carl Sagan's big idea. Mm-hmm. The critical thinking is or your ability to think critically is a much more important skill than the facts of astronomy. And that made quite an impression on me. And then I was in Seattle, and a new group of friends. I moved total stranger. I didn't know anybody in Seattle. I got off the plane and just wandered around.
Because you got a job at Boeing?
Because I was recruited. By the way, everybody's talking about how college education isn't worth it. It's not a good value. It takes your whole life to pay it back. People, if you get a degree, if you get an engineering degree, you'll get a job. All right? I mean, I'm sorry. I love you all, and I love the history of art. I'm crazy for it. But it's an investment. I mean, if you're spending that kind of money, learn to think, but also get a skill or two, So, anyway, a group of friends, newly forming group of friends, mostly at a bar called the Rain Tree, pressured me to enter the Steve Martin lookalike contest. And I won. I won.
Of course.
And, well, I don't really look like him. My claim, and this is an extraordinary claim, you can evaluate, that I understood what Steve Martin was driving at better than the other contestants. And so I won. I did not advance beyond that.
You mean comedic-wise?
No. You went in Seattle, then you went to San Francisco, then you went to, I guess, New York. Maybe it was Los Angeles for the final. And the guy who won was from Nashville. He could play the banjo. And also, I got to say, he kind of looked. Anyway, he came out as Steve Martin on Saturday Night Live. He opened the show, the fake guy. And it was cool. I've never crossed paths with him in all that time. But anyway.
But hosting Saturday Night Live would be cool.
That's a goal, I admit.
They haven't had a science guy do it yet,
I've said this I'll say it to all of you. I would love to host Saturday Night Live. I would love it. And let me I don't know if the producers are here. They certainly should be. But, Saturday Night has changed a little bit the last couple of years. They used to have a real fish out of water quality, right? They'd have an actor or actress who wasn't used to doing comedy, or they'd have somebody from the news world, and he or she would then be sports, yeah, would trying to deal with these people who are professional comedians. But now they have real actors, people who are really in the business doing it.
Well,
yeah, so my claim is I'm on the border. That I bring this other stuff to it. None of these guys are out there talking about deflating footballs. Come on, this is important stuff. This is serious business. But still, the guy's cheating. It's frustrating. And by the way, Belichick, the coach, you can hate football, you hate everything, you hate me, I understand. But just keep in mind, the guy was also fined $500,000 stealing the other guy's plays, which is completely, they had some illegal video camera in the practice stadium. There's all these, I mean, it's, you know, it's billions of dollars, literally, by the time the whole season's done, changing hands. So, you know, cheating is, I mean, it's something to be discouraged.
So you're working at Boeing.
Oh, yeah.
And you have some...
So I worked on a drawing board, you guys. One of the last guys to work on a big drawing board, making little lines and things carefully. And then I wanted to. Then I started doing stand-up comedy. Then I met guys who were starting a comedy show. This is, in my opinion, it was when Steve Martin became that huge that every city in the U.S. and Canada suddenly had a comedy club, you know, just like in an afternoon. And so, you know, I met Jerry Seinfeld and on the circuit, and I met a lot of A. Whitney Brown, if you remember, used to do it. I hope someday to be the Whitney Brown. He was really good.
I mean, you're doing normal stand-up, like What's with Airline Peanuts kind of stuff?
Yeah, right. Except they were all hilarious, brilliant engineering jokes. And really good. Hey, you're an engineer. And, you know, they could tell. Hey, man, can you fix the blender? If you're at a party. Yeah, sure. I'm an engineer. Hold the plug in the wall firmly, and then put the blender under some cold running water. And that's only funny if you're scientifically literate, okay? So see how, and so that's why I never made it, Michael. I middled, if you guys know this, I don't know if you're into this. There's the headliner, the middle, and the headliner, the middle, and the MC. I middled for a little while. Yeah. But I never made it to headliner, those guys.
Well, that's good, because we got you as the science guy.
I know. So then I worked on the comedy show, and 1 week, the way one guy remembers it, it was Geraldo Rivera who didn't show up. But the way I remember it was Rita Jenrette.
Oh, right.
Does anybody remember Rita Jenrette?
Yep.
So she was notorious for having had sex on the steps of the U.S. Capitol. And she wrote a book about it. She became a Playboy model afterwards. But here's the weird thing. I mean, the really, I won't say troubling, but let's say surprising thing about it. The guy she was having sex with was her husband. I mean, have you ever heard of such a thing?
Who does that in Washington, D.C.? All right.
Yeah. I didn't know they rolled that. I didn't have any idea. Anyway, so she didn't show up. We had to fill 6 minutes, which I'll tell you, in television, it's a long time. I mean, if he and I sat here and didn't say anything for 6 minutes, you'd notice. You'd like... Yeah, even 3 seconds is a little much. Yeah, so... Hey, Bill, you know, why don't you do that stuff you're always talking about? So I was a young guy. I was a United Way Big Brother volunteering, and I volunteered at the Pacific Science Center, which is like the California Science Center in Seattle. And I pour liquid nitrogen around and stuff. So you could do that stuff you're always talking about. You could be, you know, like, this is a guy named Ross Schaefer, who's the host of the show. You could be like Bill Nye, the science guy or something. Well, I got to go. And I went, Bill Nye, the science guy, that's fantastic. So I did the household study. I did the household uses of liquid nitrogen. You know, because we all have it around. You know, and I had limp celery but
bananas.
Yeah, I had onion. And if you get an onion cold enough, hit it with a knife, it sounds like breaking glass. It's really satisfying, really good sound. But then the thing that I still do, I mean, not every day, but from time, is you freeze marshmallows and eat them, and steam comes out of your nose, which is really good. It's really good. And so then that became this thing, and I realized very quickly that I wanted to be the next Mr. Wizard. And if you guys remember Mr. Wizard, Don Herbert. I met Don Herbert at a science teacher convention. He was very gracious. It was really something. It was really something.
There, you have a full-time job. That's pretty risky to just stop and go do something completely different.
You mean October 3rd, 1986? Yeah. So I quit my day job, but I still worked as an engineer, what was at that time, as it still is called, as a contractor engineer. So if they had a specific tool, something to assemble this precision gizmo, I would make a drawing, I'd, design the parts to get these two things to fit. And then I made a liquid intrusion resistant knob for airplane radios. That wasn't that hard a job. That was good. There, I don't know if you've been in an airliner cockpit, but there's all these buttons and knobs everywhere. The radios, by long tradition, are in the middle, in the console, it's called, and the volume knobs face straight up. And you may have been on an airplane. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry we're having difficulty with our communications equipment because the pilot dumped his coffee in the radio. Oh, by the way, there are cup holders in cockpits. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so there's a thing to keep liquids from flowing into the radio. That was pretty good. But I was doing that while I was trying to write comedy. And it was really, as I look back, what was I thinking? So I had a saying I used to say all the time, if you're awake, you should be working. And I think I took it a little too seriously. But here we are.
I met a motivation speaker back in the 80s named Mark Victor Hansen, who always used humor. So I asked him, do you have to be funny? And he said, only if you want to get paid. So I wonder if there's something to, because all the magicians I know, they all use humor in their routines.
Yeah, Michael, you should try it.
No, not for me. Oh, man. We actually worked that out in the back before.
Oh, yeah, we had a whole sheet of ones we were trying. We crossed them out. That was the best one. Yeah, that was it. Sorry.
The first time I was on Bill Maher's show, the old Politically Incorrect show, Kevin Nealon was one of the other guests. And he was just coming up with these great bit lines. It's just so spontaneous. I thought, that's what it means to be funny, is to be spontaneous. Then on the first commercial break, he pulls out this little card, he ticks off the ones he used, looks at the other ones and puts it back on, and went, that's it.
Well, it's a job.
It's a job.
So, when Jerry Seinfeld would come through Seattle on the comedy circuit before he was gigantically, enormously huge, he had, in the early days of it, he had a very small tape recorder. You may remember the noun micro cassette was a brand. Seriously, it was a tape recorder, very small. And so he would sit at brunch on Sunday and go through every joke, listen to it, and he had a list. And that's how you get to that level. It sounds like they're just screwing around, but they work really hard at it. The guys who've made it work really hard at it.
And that's what you did with the Science Guy show. You worked humor into it.
Boy, I worked, well, maybe not humor. Yeah, I tried to have humor.
How long did it take to produce a single 30-minute show?
So we would write, okay. That's a good question. So the big thing that the Science Guy show brings to the party, I got to tell you, first of all, speaking of Carl Sagan, I went to my 10th reunion, and I managed to get a meeting with him. He was a pretty big star by then, but I was an alumnus and blah, blah, blah. So I talked to the guy for less than 5 minutes, and I said, I got this idea for a show about science for kids. He says, focus on pure science. Kids resonate to pure science. Because it's really tempting, and you will watch, like Mythbusters. Those are shows about technology. I mean, in other words, technology is deeply involved, right? But Carl Sagan told me to my face, as we say in high school, that I should work on science, and that was great advice. So we would take about a month and figure out what shows we were going to do. And at PBS, you don't get it's unconventional. You don't get 13 or 26, you get 20 shows. We'd work out 20 shows, and what we bring to the party, I claim, is each show is figured out. It has learning objectives. And if there are any professional educators in here, a learning objective is a term that means something you can test. So at the end of the book chapter or the end of the radio show, the end of this fabulous event, we can test you and you will spout humans and dinosaurs that not live at the same time, or something. Or chemical reaction as a result of electrons changing, or something specific. And so that would do that for about a month. Then we bring in writers, mostly people who are funny, people who could write funny things, that is, not just funny looking. And then they would write a show, then we'd shoot about 9 days of shooting. Now, not for one show, but we generally do 3 shows at a time, all in 9 days, this and that. Then there'd be a week of what's called offline editing, and then a week of online, and then a week of sound effects. But all that's working in parallel, or
So you have
rather
multiple
in sequence.
shows going on at one time. Yeah.
And so I don't know if the people must work in what in Los Angeles we call the industry. And you know that. But we did it in Seattle, and that was a mixed blessing. We did it in Seattle, what we always tell people is because that's where we lived. Wow, yeah. So I was on Back to the Future cartoon show. And somebody, you may have seen it, it was on for a few seasons, so they would get in trouble, the cartoon characters from the movies, Back to the Future. And then they would look something up in the video encyclopedia. And they brought in Christopher Lloyd, the actor, Doc Brown. Yeah, yes, we'll look it up in the video encyclopedia. And then it would go to me on camera. I had no lines. This is before the science guy was a big deal, or if it ever was, or a deal. And one at a time, okay, so we got the balloons, one's hanging on a string, the one you rub on your hair. And the idea is that they're going to attract, or sometimes repel, but you'd see it move around because it's hanging on a string. Well, it didn't move enough. You know, I'm doing this, and then, oh, let's fix the lighting. We're going to fix the lighting, tweaking the lighting, let them stand there for whatever it is, a minute, 45 seconds, and it's really lost the charge. So we do it, and nothing really happens. Bring in the glue, bring in the glue, bring in the glue. 14 people show up. If anybody knows Spray Mount 77, it's like serious glue. So then the balloons go, I mean, you can tell it's glue, all right? But that's how you do it in Hollywood. And when we were in Seattle, there's nobody around to do that, to make those kind of directions, and I'm the head writer, and it's my freaking show. So we did a show on static electricity, and man, by the end of the day, I had received so many shocks from a Van de Graaff generator. Do you know what I'm talking about? The aluminum, the rubber belt, 25,000 volts, 50,000 volts at very low current, all day. Oh God! And but that it gave the show a quality that makes it stand the test of time.
And you did 100 of these?
100 shows, yes. 100 shows.
And then why not another 20, or did they just end it?
By then, first of all, everybody had done 100 shows. There wasn't a lot of steam left in the tank. What is it? Fuel in the steam in the boiler. People were tired. And also, things changed at Disney. Michael Eisner left. Frank Wells got killed. And it just didn't have the champion to keep it going. But so then, as you may know, I did several other shows, 100 Greatest Inventions, 100 Greatest Discoveries, stuff happens. And
Eyes of Nye.
The Eyes of Nye. And so by the time we did the Eyes of Nye, thank you. The Eyes of Nye, by the way, is where I got all this stuff about genetically modified food. But the Eyes of Nye was a show that was made for about 1/3 of the budget of the Science Guy show, because the PBS station in Seattle was not managed that well. The guy was forced to resign, and they lost a lot of money. And so it wasn't, the production values were very low. And we were always hoping to get the next, big thing.
What is the next big thing?
Well, the next big thing is the book after this one, which will be about climate change and energy. And what I want for the young people here, I want for all of us to be the next great generation. I am of an age where my parents were both in World War II. Listen, if you get a chance to be a prisoner of war for 4 years, I would skip it. I would not do that. So my dad was on Wake Island. I don't know if you've ever heard of this place. You go to Hawaii, and then you go about that far again. And it's the middle of Pacific Ocean nowhere, but it's tactically important. You can land planes there and stuff. So anyway, don't do that. And then, everybody's all hot for this very good-looking young man, Benedict Cumberbatch, right? And the Enigma Code. So I've told this story a few times, but My mom was graduated from Goucher College in the spring of 1942. And the the dean of students at Goucher Goucher was a sister school to Johns Hopkins. The dean of students there was the first cousin of the Secretary of War, Dorothy Stimson and Henry Stimson. Now, you guys, would it be different if we changed the name back to the Department of War? Now it's the Department of Defense.
It'd be a little more honest.
Yes, we're defending our oil fields. Really? Would it be different? So anyway, he said to the dean of students, can you get some women that can work on this thing? I can't tell you what it is. So although my mom was from the U.S. and lived in the U.S. through the whole thing, she worked on the Enigma code, my mother. The U.S. Navy had a big Enigma thing, and they built some of those machines, or many of those machines, and worked backwards. So it was a heck of a thing. That's an unbreakable, almost unbreakable code, and they just wailed on it until they figured it out.
So your parents had a scientific background.
Yeah,
right?
but they were part of the greatest generation. That's what they call them, right? Well, you guys, with climate change, we're going to need another great generation. We're going to need people to pull together, to make sacrifices, I suppose, to write songs about how we're all in this together. Like you listen to swing music, we're all in this together. This is what we're going to do. We're going to solve this problem. And so I want to get everybody excited about addressing climate change so that we can...
How about, since you're a science guy, science and technology solutions?
Well, yeah, so I say you're going to have both.
Electric cars.
Electric cars are good. I love them. Does anybody not drive an electric car? I feel bad for you. After you have an electric car, you'll never go back. It's just amazing. So the trouble is, if everybody had one all of a sudden, the grid can't handle it yet. And who makes the electricity? I know, yeah, like we'll burn coal. Cool. No, wait. Yeah, so that's one thing. And the other thing, if you guys can find some way, you guys, young chemical engineers here, material science people, but with your nanotubes, if you could find some way to desalinate seawater, it would be fantastic. It would just be fantastic. That would really help people of the world. And then the other thing I really think, Michael, the longer we put it off, addressing climate change, the more drastic it's going to be. Like, you don't like government interference now, you just wait, people. I mean, I just think back about, there used to be rationing on rubber, rationing on food, victory gardens, all these things. That kind of stuff is going to have to come around again in a 21st century style. But the other thing, there is a model for this, redistribution, taking dividends from energy and redistributing it to people. And what we like to, in my community now, we call it a carbon fee. We don't want to call it a tax. You never call it a tax. It's a carbon fee.
No taxes.
No, no, evil. No.
But why do you? What's the
organized government? Bad. Yeah. Traffic lights are bad. So everybody should have the right to do. Okay. So a fee and dividends. So you'd redistribute the fees for carbon. Whenever you make carbon dioxide, you drive and stuff, then you pay into this fund, and then that fund is redistributed. It sounds crazy, but the model for this exists in that bastion of progressive blue state thought, Alaska. And so you may not know, there's the Alaska fund, what's the middle word? Permanent fund, thank you. The Alaskan Permanent Fund, the APF. So you have to live there, but it doesn't matter how old you are. They redistribute the wealth. So they get, this year, the fund is worth about $42 million, and Alaskan residents will get $1,884. So if you're 6 years old, you're going to get $1,884. If you live there, though, you can't be registered to vote and living in, say, New York. And so if it works, if it can work in Alaska, it seems like it could work.
You know, it's like, it's not the science isn't that hard. People in Europe have no trouble getting it.
The science? Oh, yeah, the science is, we got that.
And Europeans have no trouble with evolution, so what is it about Americans?
You're the Skeptic magazine editor? Man,
Yes, but you're the guest today, so you get to answer the question.
What I always say, it's just kind of an easy way out. You know, here's the thing that's so troubling, you guys, and I am just now, I am not 60, not yet, but it was 2 years ago that I realized that I was going to die. I thought that...
April 3rd?
No, I thought that everybody else was getting older, but that I was fine.
I think that all the time.
Yeah. I'm the same.
It's called
Everybody
delusion.
else they're suffering, but I'm good. But then it became clear, yeah.
You mean denial's a wonderful thing? Is that
Yeah,
your point?
well, otherwise you couldn't even press forward at all. So that fear of death, I think, drives people to extraordinary things. And
Don't you think it's kind of political, though? I mean,
well, it's certainly become political.
you know, with climate change, it's like if you believe in that, you believe in communism, or you're against the Constitution or capitalism or something.
So what the climate denier organizers have been able to do is introduce the idea that scientific uncertainty, plus or minus 2 or 3%, is the same as doubt about the whole thing. That scientific, plus or minus 2% is the same as plus or minus 100%. And they've been very successful. And I don't know how much you follow this, but they hired the very same guys who are now in their 80s.
That work for tobacco.
Yeah, who did the jobs for the tobacco company, introducing the idea that a lot of people get lung cancer anyway, so this isn't really that much of a deal. And I smoke cigarettes and I'm fine.
My favorite one was applesauce is toxic if you eat enough of it.
Is it really?
Yeah, somebody actually said, well, I don't know. You're the
I haven't.
Have you tested that?
I've eaten a lot of applesauce, man. And let me just say, I'm of a different generation. If peanut butter turns out to be bad, I'm doomed, man. I eat or popcorn. My goodness, I eat popcorn. So.
But we don't have your climate book here yet.
No.
And your publicist would be very upset we didn't. So why is it that Americans have so much trouble accepting evolution?
So I think it's the fear of death. I think it makes people a little nuts.
You mean the need to believe in an afterlife and a materialistic worldview that people think you have to have for evolution would deny that?
Yeah, or there's trouble. It just seems, I mean, just think of all the stuff you know, all the images you can call up in your brain. All the algebra many of you can probably do, and word problems you can solve, and the reasoning and finding your way in a strange city or whatever it is, driving a car in traffic. You can do all that, and to think it all just goes away when you die. It sucks. I mean, it just sucks. And so, Michael, this is in the book. I don't want to give, it's only a paragraph, but speaking of Super Bowl, where's that stadium this year?
Arizona.
Arizona. Does it hold 100? It holds 80,000.
Yeah.
80,000 people. So if you live to be 82 years old and 7 weeks, and it depends on leap years whether it's 7 weeks or 7.5 weeks, you get 30,000 days on Earth. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I don't want to know.
I know. So in this thought experiment, we are watching our life on the football field in Phoenix, and every day you sit in a different seat watching your life. Okay? With 30,000, you don't get halfway around. It sucks.
But that's not going to happen to us, right?
No. We ride bikes.
The singularity is coming in 2030, and if you can make it to there, you can make it forever. And
so, you know, about the singularity,
are you skeptical?
I touch on that too. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the singularity, but I do a lot of talks at colleges, universities, and people always ask me about the singularity. Always, quite often. And this is when someone builds a computer, or a group of people build a computer that's as sophisticated as a human brain. Then I always ask, what about my old boss? Oh, we've done that. No, so we thought about having an old boss joke in every chapter.
Yeah, but they got old.
Yeah. You know, talk about my brain being this big, his brain, you know, like that. But anyway.
Singularity. Afterlife.
Yeah. So the belief is that this is going to revolutionize the world completely. In 2030, when guys at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Caltech, make this machine that can not only win at Jeopardy, but, you know, can drive a car, as long as it's hooked up right. And as long as it's plugged in. I just am always struck. There are 20%, a fifth of humankind has no electricity, lives without electricity. I mean, they're affected by electricity. They have all this stuff, all this cargo, as Jared Diamond calls it. But they don't have electricity. It's not that they've never made a mobile phone call, cell phone call. They've never made a phone call. They don't have a phone. So when this computer takes over Cambridge, Massachusetts, are they even going to know it in Central Africa? Will it affect them at all? And somebody has to, in many cases, literally shovel the coal. If the electrical grid goes out, we're dead. Artificial, schmartificial.
But say in 500 years when we're off coal.
500 years, right, yeah, 500 years. Right.
When we're still around.
When you and I are still cycling on really nice bikes. Mulholland Drive will be repaved.
Carbon bikes. Where did they get that carbon?
I don't know. There's a big shortage of it.
You're sort of invoking the precautionary principle. We've talked about nuclear power before. You're a little concerned about that. What could go wrong?
Nuclear power, I'm concerned about, you guys. 433 commercial reactors. There's a lot of military reactors. 433 commercial reactors. 3 of them, 3 Mile Island almost blew up. Not quite, almost. Chernobyl blew up. Fukushima is not working very well. And I do a job for Toshiba every year, and everybody in that company knows somebody or knows somebody who knows somebody. Mm-hmm. Can't move back there for 300 years. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, would you get in a car that has catastrophic failure 3 out of 433 times? No.
But what about all the people that die from carbon and coal mines?
I'm down. That's not good either.
Right.
Yeah. Well, but see, we kill people in other ways. Great. No, so, I mean, I'm a mechanical engineer. Like so many of you, I just can't wait for my Mechanical Engineer magazine every month. And my colleagues just love nuclear power. I think it's the greatest thing. And I'm open-minded. You dig the stuff up, you fish in it, you put it back in the ground. It sounds like a great thing. But it's just too complicated for humans. It's Homer Simpson running the thing. That's what's wrong. I mean, they just have something to prove to me, that's all.
So, and this gets to a couple of your chapters that you sort of went out on the edge here on cloning. You're skeptical of GMOs.
Well, cloning,
you're skeptical
I claim
of.
there's evolutionary reasons to avoid cloning, especially my old boss. And I start this like so many trains of thought with me. This starts with sex. That the best idea anybody has as to why anybody has sex, whether you're a sea jelly, a dandelion, a jacaranda tree, the reason you have sex is to get a new combination of genes, a radically new combination of genes that your enemy is not lions and tigers and bears. They can be trouble, first to admit. Oh my. But your enemy is germs and parasites. That's what's going to get you. And Ebola would be a classic example. So by having a new combination of genes, living things apparently are able to stay just slightly ahead of the mutating germs and parasites. So if you clone yourself, you're going to not be doing the mix. You're going to be falling one behind. If you do that a few times, you're going to be falling behind her and behind her and behind her. And then you're going to show up at the emergency room, and the rest of us have to pay for your rehydration and resuscitation machine because you got some germs that the rest of us already dealt with.
But do you think people really want to clone themselves, or is it more just the technology can be used to produce organs in a petri dish?
Well, that's a whole nother. Yes. Ha ha ha, Mr. Shermer. Dr. Shermer. No, I'm a huge fan. The trouble is, historically and quite reasonably, they use the same word, cloning, for replacing stem cells in an egg. I mean, to me, what would be better? Getting a titanium hip, like some people have? Oh, you, yeah. From a lot of bicycling. Or having your own stem cells grow you a new hip. Thing is that they're done the same way. You, at least mechanically, you poke this crazy thin pipette into the ovum and that DNA out and put the other DNA in. And it's called fusing. And so you know, there's a time when a fertilized egg is 160 stem cells or so before they've differentiated. And so if you could find a way to induce those to make you a new hip, it would be just cool. And I went to Hans Kiersted's lab. This is the neuroscientist surfer. And he breaks, it's a little creepy, but it is what they do in medicine. He breaks the backs of the rats with this precision rat backbreaker gizmo. Injects them with stem cells, gives them don't reject my cells drugs, conventional organ drugs. And in a few weeks, the rats are walking around. It's really amazing. And then, not to creep you out, they sacrifice the animals and then take, tissue samples really thin, and you can see where the nerves have grown back together. So this is where science and ethics have to take a meeting.
But why say you're against cloning or whatever? Because very few people would really just clone themselves.
Oh no, it's a charming thing. I just watched a commercial yesterday where she's got 4 copies of herself and they're all doing stuff at the same time.
Yeah, but
it's really difficult.
Yeah,
and how many times have people said, Michael, you ought to clone yourself so we get this magazine out faster? Yeah, how many times have they said that to you?
None.
They say it to me.
Well,
not they don't say me to get your magazine out, but to get...
But it's a little bit like the same thing about GMOs.
Oh, GMOs. I have strong and correct opinions.
I know,
about that.
So I have to correct you on your correct opinions here. So, the European Union, which is not exactly considered, too cautious about these sorts of things, just published a research study on a decade of EU-funded GMO research. The main conclusion to be drawn from the efforts of more than 130 research projects covering a period of more than 25 years of research and involving more than 500 independent research groups is that biotechnology, and in particular GMOs, are not per se more risky than, for example, conventional plant breeding technologies. I just published that in my latest column of Scientific American because I'm pro-GMOs.
I'm kind of pro-GMOs.
Kind of. Well,
here's my claim.
Okay.
And you can refute your brains out. Now, there were 2 numbers in there. One was 10 years. One was 25 years.
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, when you modify an organism, and let's say it's corn, you know exactly what you're doing to the corn. I buy that. I am sure I have eaten, compared to the rest of you, I've eaten a lot more modified popcorn than any of you. I'll take you on. Because I have a popcorn problem.
With the peanut butter on it, or what?
Yeah. I'm right there. But my claim is that in 10 years, or in the typical testing is 3 years, sometimes 4 years. The government review is typically 3 years or 4 years. In that short amount of time, less than a decade, you cannot be sure what you're going to do to the ecosystem. You don't know, you know exactly what you've done to the plant, or the soybean, the corn, but you cannot be sure what you've done to the organisms that eat the plants.
But that's true of anything.
But so here's the question.
We've gone down that road 10,000 years ago.
But so here's the question. Why is that's the second question. First question is, why do we need to do it? Do I need to fund it as a taxpayer? Totally get it, where Monsanto, for example, makes a better corn, that you can pour a better or environmentally perhaps more benign insecticide on it, and it'll grow fine. I get you. But what about the two? So you guys, full disclosure, this is the only chapter in the book which I called "What the GMF" that has genetically modified food that has drawn any criticism at all. I'm going to go to St. Louis on something like the 10th. It's a Tuesday, I think, the 10th of February, and meet with Richard Fraley, who's the he's the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer of Monsanto, and let him give me an earful about this. And if I'm wrong, I will say I'm wrong. But my claim is you can't know, thank you, you can't know the ecosystem in 10 years.
Well, you can't say you're wrong then because we would know for, say, 25 years or 50
So why not wait 25 years? What's the freaking
Well, because
hurry?
there's people starving in Africa.
Okay.
Golden rice.
Golden rice now.
Golden rice
Michael,
has saved millions.
It has, or it has the potential to?
Potential.
Yeah,
well,
okay.
But
Yeah. No,
well,
so the problem, incidentally,
this is the problem with the precautionary principle. You don't know, we don't know how much good it's going to do either. So no technology would ever be developed if we employed it too
I'd say
much.
it's easy to tell. 10 years is too short. That's my claim.
I don't know. There's people starving now. That need food
so
now.
our problem is not food production. I remind us, are we addressing the problem that needs to be solved? Just in the United States alone, we waste a tremendous amount of food. Our problem is food distribution.
Yes, that's true.
Okay.
There's a lot of political corruption.
So it doesn't mean that food distribution is the problem, doesn't mean we shouldn't modify food. I'm right there with you, people. The thing is just careful what you wish for, and the examples are classic. The papaya. You don't have to know anything about papaya. The one with the black spot virus looks like hell. The one without it looks great. And people modified the genome so that with the virus, a piece of the virus genome itself, so that the papaya is not susceptible. But probably for cautionary reasons, Japan doesn't allow importing of it. So this has affected the economics, of papaya production. All right, then the other one is the monarch butterflies. All right, now the monarch butterflies. They, like so many of us, love milkweed. And by spring, the classic stuff is Roundup, which has a name, glycol. Does anybody know the name? Help.
Glyphosate.
Glyphosate. That doesn't quite, I didn't say it right. It's a GLY word, and it's important. Glyphosate. And it works great. You can spray it on the field, kills a lot of the green plants, the corn will come anyway, but it also accidentally kills milkweed. So in certain areas, the monarch butterfly population was decimated. And I don't know if you've ever seen monarch butterflies. First of all, they're gorgeous. But the other thing about them, it's crazy. They fly from almost Canada to Mexico. These are little butterflies. And I am just fascinated with them. I'll tell you, I'm a mechanical engineer. I did a lot, like so many people. I did so much fluid mechanics. I have watched butterflies fly upwind. It's cool. They exploit the boundary layer where the air is moving very slowly near the ground. That's just crazy. And then if you've ever been to a monarch butterfly landing zone, like Monterey Bay has a big park there, they're just look around at the number of human heads in here. Imagine 1 million of those are butterflies. I mean, it's just crazy. So they're beautiful. And so to accidentally kill them was an oversight.
How are we doing this?
By putting Roundup on the milkweed.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And so the reason you put Roundup on the milkweed is because you modified the corn to accept Roundup, to live through Roundup. Totally unintended consequence.
But that's true for everything.
Okay, so
of course, yes.
my claim
so you got
is
to pick and choose which.
That my claim is 4 years and 4 years is not enough.
Yeah, okay.
That's my claim.
Well,
and you'll find out when the monoculture of Iowa is suddenly ravaged by a new corn borer, European corn borer, which was an invasive species, which has now been controlled by modifying the corn with the Bacillus thuringiensis bacterium, which makes the corn borer crystallize. His or her digestive tract solidifies and they die. They starve to death. but their corn borers screwing it. So, and then what's happened, you get, and this is a separate issue, I'm the first to admit, a separate issue. Get on a separate treadmill of a new type of insecticide, a new type of plant, a new type of insecticide. And another unintended consequence is individual farmers have sold out, and it's become this tendency to have monoculture, that is to say one type of plant over enormous areas. And that takes more energy to produce, more water and stuff. It's not, the ecosystem's not as robust. But you guys, I am open-minded, Michael. The guy agreed to have a meeting with me. I can't wait. And if I'm wrong, I will...
Come back here to Caltech.
Yeah, what they want you to do, if you've been down this road, you publish the book a second time with a never-before-seen footage, or with a new chapter. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to bring it on. But let me ask you this. Why are so many corporations opposed to putting GMO on the label?
Well, because of the political hype over it. It's a
well, why not have their own political hype to make it unhypeful?
Huh? I will leave it at this, that European countries who are so much more advanced than us on so many of these issues, who would agree with you on nuclear power. Well, not in France, though. My adopted country, Germany, for example, is weaning itself off of nuclear power. They're going total,
I'm all for
replenishing energy. They're even doing more solar than America, and they have like 1/10 the sunshine. But they are in favor of GMOs. They're not with you on the GMOs. So just keep that in mind.
I'm ready. Yeah. So just because one person jumps off a bridge, does that mean you have to jump off?
But these are your people, you see. Anyway.
But I spent a lot of time with it. I interviewed the Washington State wheat breeder, the gal at UC Davis who modifies the corn, and I'm right there, man. You can make better corn. God, the apples you get nowadays are so freaking good. I gotcha. But my concern is we're going to have an accidental big mess by making these large monocultures because of you modify things faster than the ecosystem can absorb it.
So before we turn it over to the audience, and if you care to start lining up at the two microphones
this
here.
This is really fun, Michael. I hope you guys, thank you for sticking around.
I just wanted to bring it back to one We'll bring it back to where we began with Carl Sagan, and you end your book talking about extraterrestrial intelligence, and are you optimistic for the future of human civilization, and will we contact the aliens?
So there's two questions. So Carl Sagan started the Planetary Society in 1980. It's the world's largest non-governmental space interest organization, and by all accounts, we have a really cool logo. So I like to say we do three things. We educate. We have award-winning bloggers and journalists, Emily Locktewala, Matt Kaplan's here, Jason Davis. We have guys who really give the real information about what's going on in space exploration. Then we create. We have programs around the world we really are studying ways to deflect an asteroid. That's like a real problem. And maybe one of the reasons we've never heard from another civilization is you have to pass the asteroid test. If you don't have a space program when you detect an asteroid, you go the way of the ancient dinosaurs. And then it's like, let's see, on a PC, I think it's Control-Alt-Delete. Is that right? On a Mac, it's wipe. There's a wipe command. Are you sure? Wipe. It would just take it all out. And then the third thing we do is we advocate. So I go to Washington, D.C. from time to time. We have a guy, Casey Dreyer, who's our political analyst, and he's been 8 times this year. And he schmoozes, he interacts with congressmen and women and their staffs, to encourage them to fund space exploration. And I'll just give you an example. Adam Schiff, who's a local guy.
He's our guy here.
He's our guy, supports a mission to Europa. Europa is a moon of Jupiter that's twice as much seawater as the Earth. And then John Culberson is from Texas, who, as near as I can tell, is a devout Christian who believes that he is on Earth to find life on Europa. And he's a character. He's the coolest guy. I just love them. Anyway, I love them both. But anyway, this is where it brings the blues and the reds together in a way like nothing else does. And what we want to do at the Planetary Society, and did I mention the big announcement tomorrow in the New York Times embargoed right now? What we want to do at the Planetary Society is answer these two questions. And if you meet people that say, I've never answered these questions, asked these questions, they're lying. Where did we come from? Where did we come from? How did we all get here? And that's what this book's about, is how did we all get here? And then the other thing is, are we alone in the universe? Are we alone? Now, the distances between stars are so fantastically huge. It's very unlikely that we'll fly to one. But we may very well hear a radio or light signal from them, detect them. And my friends, if we were to detect life on another world, it would change this one. No one would think about his or her place in space the same way. It would be like Copernicus or Galileo. It would change everything. And it would not be an individual doing it. It would be a society who thought this was a worthy use of our intellect and treasure.
A science-based society.
A science thing. Yes. Would you say thing? Science?
Science thing is
a
good.
Science thing. If we discovered fossil microbes on Mars, let alone something still alive on Mars, it would change the world. Does it have DNA? Does it turn out that Mars was where life started and it got hit with an impactor and woo, and we're all descendants of Martians? Are there, you know, when you go to Europa, they say it's 4.5 billion years old with seawater. Are there Europanians swimming around down there talking about, you know, algebra? Like, who knows?
You know, Sagan used to make this point that those big questions, any time before us, before our generation, they didn't have the technology to answer the question. And anybody in the future, 100 years from now, they'll have the answers to those questions. We're the ones that get to try to answer.
We're living right there.
Right there.
So the 2020 rover will land on Mars in 2021. It'll leave it might be 2022, depends what time of year it wants. You can only go every 26 months to Mars, Earth-Mars thing. And then who knows what it'll discover will be the caching rover. So what we at the Planetary Society, then I'll wrap it up. We advocate for $1.5 billion for planetary science. So if you ask people what they think the budget for NASA is, and I mentioned NASA because it's still the world's largest space agency by a factor of about 3. NASA's budget, many people will say, is 10% of the U.S., but no, it's 0.4%. And planetary science at $1.5 billion, if we could get it up to $1.5 billion, would be 9%. So it'd be 9% of 0.4%. Anyone? 0.36, I think, 36%. I mean 0.036. And so it is interesting to note, is anybody from Canada here? I carry all the time the Canadian $5 bill, which celebrates their space program, the space station, and an astronaut in a suit, whom we presume is Chris Hadfield, walking around there. And it's just an interesting thing that we take it for granted here in the U.S. that things are going to get done in space. We all have our global positioning system. We complain when the weather report's off 18 minutes. And all that comes from space. And so what we want to do is advocate for space exploration so that we can, dare I say it, change the world.
Let's hear it for Bill Nye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Michael, lead on.
All right, we'll take a few minutes for questions.
I'll try to tighten it up. I'll try to tighten it up here.
No speeches, quick question, and let him rifle through answers. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. Bill Nye, I want to ask you a question regarding GMOs. But first of all, I want to tell you that I got...
Can you tip the microphone down towards your head?
I got stuck living in a small town in Missouri in the Bible Belt. And you were the oasis for my little boys.
I love you, man.
And one of them is here, but you taught them science and to have critical thinking, and so being here is such an honor to see you after all those years.
I love you.
I love you too.
And that's a human thing, not connected to religion as such.
Also, your Ken Ham debate was exceptional. I've seen many of them,
Bring it
but
on.
you really, really did a
Hire
great
this
job.
woman. Yeah.
My question on GMOs is this. I used to work as quality assurance for Monsanto, and I did the molecular studies for plants, GMOs. I ended up resigning from that position. I'm not going to tell you why.
You'd have to kill us.
No, I will get killed. But you made a statement regarding that we know what happens when genes are inserted into the plants.
Well, you can know the gene sequence, right?
Well, when I was doing it, or studying, or examining those studies, because they had to go through quality assurance to be approved, they didn't. It was a process where a gun with gold dust was used to inject these genes wildly into the plant. And because genes are interactive, they have communities, and some suppress, and now we know with epigenetics there are operator genes and all kinds of stuff that is working at a different level. They really didn't know what was landing where. It was just the outcome.
So is there a question?
The question is, when you made the statement that we know what is going on.
Oh, I see.
Has that changed through 2003? Do you know specifically?
The gene sequencing machines over the last 10, 12 years, they've come a long way.
So Monsanto is using that, you think?
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh, they got gene sequencing out the yin-yang, of yang-yang of yin.
Okay.
But, and as I say, when I say know the organism, I mean to a few orders of magnitude, accuracy, you know what you got.
Okay.
I agree with you, but you don't really know everything.
At that time they didn't, so that's what I wanted.
You're just pointing it out, yeah.
When you meet with the CEO in Chesterfield,
Mr. Dr. Fraley,
don't
who's
tell
won
him.
a bunch of awards, big deal guy.
Don't tell him about me, thanks.
And just let me be specific, when you talk about genetically modified organisms, generally you mean taking a gene from one species, separated over geologic timescales, and putting it in this species, that species into this species. George Washington and those guys were taking pollen from one plant and shaking it onto the eggs of another. I mean, I get it. That's sort of intra-species modification. We're talking about species separated over enormous timescales. And I'm not saying it's inherently a bad idea. I'm saying let's be careful.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. Very quick question on the GMO. I want to take you back to when you said that why don't corporations respond and put out information?
And they do.
In response.
I mean, yeah.
They do indeed.
But they suppress putting GMOs on labels for food and store shelves.
Right.
That's for sure.
And my question to you would be, and my question to you is very simple. Would you be opposed to putting labels on vaccines that say may cause autism?
Oh, yeah. Yes, absolutely.
They're the same thing, aren't they?
No, not to us on this side of it. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not in the skeptical community. No,
right.
sorry.
It
the
seems to
scientific
me-
evidence against that's overwhelming. Sorry, man.
But the perspective of the American people about what GMO means is badly confused scientifically. So putting the label on, wouldn't that be miscommunicating an idea really badly?
No. The difference is it doesn't say may contain GMOs. It says contains GMOs.
But when
Contains
that
not-
communicates something more than that, and
Okay.
when you know that, that's the problem. That's my point, and that's all I'm saying.
Okay, I can't, yeah. You may
See
be
what
right.
happens when you write something controversial? Oh,
Yeah,
boy.
it's cool. I think it's good.
Okay,
And
yes,
as
sir.
I say, I may be wrong. Tip it back up. Party on, man. Take control. So grab it and tip it back towards you. It's
good like
friction.
that.
It's manageable.
Okay, go for it. Go ahead. No, it's all right. Go ahead.
The bones light up. Yeah.
As a kid, I used to do that a lot. It was a fun show. Anyway, you mentioned that having a pretty accent can help you influence people.
Well,
it's not the
my
question.
claim is I'm not sure people in Kentucky would have embraced Ken Ham in the same way if he didn't have an Australian accent.
Okay.
He made reference to it in the first paragraph of his thing there. Go ahead.
Well, I think, yeah, that sounds true. But I'm saying that progressives can't really recruit James Bond-looking, sounding people to run for office in the States.
So you want me to run for office?
No. Please do. Anyway. My question is, it seems like conservatives really get their feet wet in nourishing the next generation of political leaders. Do you think that secular people do the same thing, or at least the secular elite do the same thing, or should they do the same thing?
I mean, should secular people run for office?
No, should powerful people who are secular help nourish the next generation of secular leaders?
Well,
or
I
are
mean,
they doing that?
Everybody's got to do what he or she is comfortable with, right? Michael, have you
That's right.
tried
Well,
promoting?
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, that's what religious people say often. You know, I'm not comfortable teaching creationism to...
So what are you saying?
I'm saying...
That everybody in here has an obligation to go out and...
No, is there an institutional deficit of powerful secular people helping to nurture the...
Yeah, I see where he's going with it. Okay, first of all, having a secular government simply means religion has nothing to do with the government. You could be personally religious as much as you want, as long as has nothing to do with how you vote. That's all it means to be a secular government. So I think what he's really asking is more out-and-out atheists, agnostics, whatever, running for office, because, in fact, people's religious beliefs do influence how they vote. So that's really what he's getting at. But let's keep it rolling there.
Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. This might just be a clarification on the previous question about GMO labeling. Mm-hmm. And that would be, would you not agree that the moment that GMO labeling is mandatory and enforced, that the argument would go from, well, why don't they want GMO labeling? You got to think about it, to, oh my gosh, they're labeled for a reason. There's something bad with them. I think that was more of a clarification on that question.
Yeah, I totally follow you guys.
I would agree that the general public is going to look at that and they're going to think, well, there's something wrong with those are bad, and it's kind of needless.
Or will 5 years go by and everybody buys, it might say interspecies GMO. 5 years go by, everybody buys it and everybody's fine, and then the controversy goes away. It could go the other way, right?
That's right.
Right?
Okay.
As I say, I eat all the freaking popcorn.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I grew up watching your show, and I just recently watched the episode on evolution, and it made me really upset to realize that an episode like that would kind of be a touchy subject now for some parents.
Oh, you guys, in 1994, got a call from PBS. This is really a real true fact, not a false fact. Which at that time was, I guess still was in Northern Virginia, in Fairfax, whatever. Be sure to say that evolution is only a theory. And I just slam. No, sorry, lady. No. Sorry, go ahead, please.
Well, that answers my question. I was wondering if there was any worry about that on the show.
Well, this is another advantage of being in Seattle. Seriously, just being a little off the beaten path. We just did it. And if I had it to do again, I would do it a lot better. We were limited resources back then.
So was there any turning point between then and now that made it such a touchy subject? Or have you just seen the same?
I don't know, Michael. So it's, seriously.
Has there been like a turning point?
There's been this anti-science conservatism that has taken place over the last 20 years. I think that's why maybe most of you are here. And where it comes from is not clear, because, well, you can say politics, but that's a big thing. Over the earth. That's
European
why.
countries are super political. It's the religious influence that's causing the problem. The percentages that 40% of Americans who don't accept evolution has been pretty stable. Still not, right, Don? About 44%.
Oh, I want to thank Don Prothero, who really helped me with the book.
Yeah, Don.
Where is he? Yes, thank you.
So vigilant we must be. Go ahead.
Thank you.
My concern is about books like yours being written for a particular audience of people who are already receptive to these ideas. And I'm an educator myself, and so the concern that I have is when people are presented with facts that go against their very deeply held beliefs, they become intractable and they dig in their heels. So how do we communicate these ideas to people who are just rejecting them out of hand?
All right, that's a fantastic question. Let us run the following little test. Stand by. How many people are what can we say? Let's say atheist or agnostic here. How many of you were brought up? How many of you were brought up in a religion?
Wow.
And so it's about the same number, right?
Pretty
visually,
close, yeah.
So my belief is, wait a minute. What I think is, you don't change like that. You got to be exposed to secular ideas, to agnostic, atheistic ideas for a long time, for years. And it's got to steep. It's just like skepticism with regard to ghosts and angels and the connection between autism and vaccines. It's got to steep. You got to think it over. And so along that line, in my book, and by the way, there's 20 books in a carton, if you have friends. I did it, people describe it like you used, say, breezy style.
I didn't say that one, but yeah.
But that would be one of them.
Yeah.
I talk in many passages in the book are based on my own experience. I remember the time I met Ivan the gorilla. No, you don't. Yes, I do. Actually, yes, I do. And so I wrote it in that way to engage people. So what I will say again, the longest journey starts with a single step. So I wrote the book.
That's good. That's really good.
Attribution, Chevy Chase. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It was Kevin Nealon. I meant Kevin Nealon.
Kevin Nealon.
I wrote this book trying to engage people, and it was #1 on Amazon.com's creationist bestseller list. And I mention it because the creationists are interested in it. They're reading it, and I think the opportunity is with young people, the future. You know, once somebody's entrenched in his or her idea about the origin of the world and creation myths or where we all came from myths, and we have one, you know, I mean, ours is a little more reasonable to me. It sits with you, it takes a long time. So you can want to blow your brains out, or you can chip away at the problem. And so I believe I'm chipping away. That's a great question. Thank you.
You were able to reach so many people with your show.
I love you, man.
And part of what made Cosmos, the reboot, such a big thing was it was the first time in a long time that there was a science-based show on prime time. And so my question is...
By the way, the producer's here. Brandon Braga, are you here?
Who?
Oh, he... Anyway. Yes. He's here. Yeah.
But with television driven by ad sales and shows needing to have good ratings in order to get those ad sales up, how do you go about financing and funding a science-based show in today's television climate?
Well, note well, The Big Bang Theory, not really a science-based show, but that is, most weeks is the most popular show on television. Not the most popular sitcom, most popular show. So people watch it who have an acceptance of science, right? Then the Discovery Channel is an enormous $4 billion business. I'm not saying it's all good, but there's a market for it. No, I mean, really, there's some shows, I mean, NASA's Unsolved Mysteries, whatever, that's a History Channel thing. That maybe is not the greatest thing. But, you know, I don't know how much you know about it, but you can turn it off. You know, when people complain about television, it's not the problem, it's just one more opportunity. As far as getting the Science Guy show funded, it was at a different time with different leadership. I don't know if you remember Tipper Gore. You can have different feelings about her, but she really spearheaded this idea that television stations or station groups had to have 3 hours of educational programming a week. And man, these station managers are just running in circles screaming. It's like, oh my God, we're all gonna die. My license to print money is gonna be turned off for 3 hours a week. And so, you know, IFLS, do you know IFLS? I fucking love science, sorry, my word, I love science. IFLS has over 4 million followers, maybe it's 7 million followers. So I think we're at a tipping point. the tipping point perhaps that you alluded to by Carl Sagan. We're living at this extraordinary time. So what we do is try to make it, everybody, when you go to make a television show, it has to be entertaining first.
Yeah.
Sorry, it cannot be, fact first. And so that's what we did on the Science Guy show. So all I can tell you is we're trying to do it, man. We're chipping away at the problem. That's a good question. Yeah.
Well, first, thank you for all you do.
I love you, man. We love you, man.
When you use the word evolution, some people think of monkeys turning into men, but most people still think of wet biological processes.
Really?
And my take on that is that evolution is really a much more general concept, that whatever can exist in an environment can exist.
Yeah. So sir, if this were a game show, could you express that in the form of a question?
Yeah. So the development of artificial intelligence and the singularity is part of our natural evolution. But I don't hang around with people like Ken Ham, but do you think that an expansion of the term evolution to mean anything that can exist and survive, no matter how it gets created, is part of evolution?
Yeah.
Well, because I think people like Ken Ham think that it stops at man because we're the last.
Oh, he definitely thinks that. I mean, along with his other extraordinary things. Oh yeah, he thinks we're it. We're done. You can't do any better than this.
Yeah. So what about expanding that? Because I don't think the layperson, that's my point, I don't think the layperson, you say evolution, they think of biology.
So you're saying that the advanced computer is a natural result of biology?
Yeah. Just like our intelligence and our
You should write a book. Because I follow you, but for example, if we go to another planet with other wet living things, I'm not clear that they would come up with transistors and stuff. They might.
Well, eventually, given it 4 billion years, they might.
I mean, they might, but I'm not certainly, you're saying the artifact, the tools we make are a result of evolution. Yeah, well, one of my big ideas is that humans are part of the ecosystem. But seriously, for a guy like Ken Ham, for a guy, the creationists, I think they strongly feel that they're separate, that they're special, that a deity made them a big deal. And if you ever met my old boss, you know that's obviously not true. So I'll give you that computers are a result of evolution. I don't see myself pounding the table about making the point too strong.
The SETI program is kind of premised on the idea that they will have radio technology.
I got no problem with that. Yeah. And I was going to say, so the one way to make sure we don't hear from another civilization by radio or light is not to listen. That will guarantee it. Yep. So at the planetary side, we support search for extraterrestrial.
Okay, we got to go on to the next one. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for wearing my favorite colored tie.
Purple?
Me or
Mr. Nye.
That's good, Michael. The whole monotone thing.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's a SCEPTIC uniform. Go ahead.
SCEPTIC uniform. I'm glad I missed it by that much.
Yeah, you inadvertently answered part of my question with the last question about the singularity, because I tend to think that technology is a necessary part of evolution.
Well, certainly for humans. Humans would not be the global empennage kickers that we are without our technology.
Right. So I won't go there, but how far do we have to go with Moore's law? Go ahead and answer that one.
How far do we have to go with Moore's law? Well, as a guy who decided to go mechanical instead of electrical, I got no idea. I mean, but it sure seems like it's a long. We have, when I was doing it, we would do lithography. We would do chips at 50 molecules, getting down in 30 molecules. Then, in other words, the silicon's 30 molecules thick. They're getting to half of that. We
haven't.
So I don't know, man. It's still a ways off. The other thing that's happening now, how many people here, for some reason, do not know how to write computer code? Oh, there's a few. No, there's so many engineers coming out of school now in computer science who can write code that all these shortcuts are being developed to, even though it's an existing computer, an existing machine with existing transistor logic, all the signal compression and so on and checking for errors, So there's a lot of stuff going on in exchange or parallel with Moore's law to make computers even faster and faster. So I think you can count on a lot more developments over the next 20 years. But we got to get to work on climate change, and we got to find ways to produce electricity and store it more economically. Cool question.
So you can plug in your electric car more
So
places.
I can plug in my electric car. You guys, you'll never go back. This is just the coolest
All
thing.
right, let's go.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments on the role of capitalism in climate change?
Yes. That is a great question.
This is the next book.
Yeah, so people have argued reasonably that capitalism is inherently bad, and people have argued quite reasonably that capitalism is inherently good. But I think capitalism is what humans do, but to make sure that everybody gets a fair shake, it has to be regulated. And this is not extraordinary. You guys, I just remember, this won't take too long, it is to be hoped. When I was a kid growing up back east, you'd go to the beach in Delaware. I still do go to the beach in Delaware. And when I was a kid, there was tar on the beach all the time. There was so much tar. How much tar was there? You come home, people would have, and I say home, rented house for the week. People would have a tin of gasoline on the porch and a rag to take the tar off your feet. Didn't want the kids traipsing the tar through the house. And if somebody saw a dolphin, this would be an Atlantic bottlenose dolphin, people would like totally freak. And they'd go running down to the beach, it's a dolphin, oh my God, it's a dolphin, it's fantastic. Well, now, those bleeding heart liberals, with their goddamn Clean Water Act, now there's no tar on the beach, and there's dolphins, 50 dolphins, 100 dolphins every day swimming this way, they come back this way. And it's because tanker companies are no longer allowed to flush their tanks just into the ocean. So, but that's capitalism, and people drive more than they ever did. And so it's regulated. So we need to regulate carbon put into the air. The answer is both. It's good and bad.
I just wanted to know how you feel about the fact that you've sort of inspired and shaped the minds of so many people, including myself, and if you ever expected that to happen when you started the show.
I love you, man. Whoa, man. And two things. First of all, the objective of the Science Guy show, and I put this online, it's on my website, and was 1992-93 was to change the world. That was the objective. It's in print. I have it, the very first document framed in my house.
It's on your wall.
Yeah, he's seen it. But it did? Like, you're joking me. So I say this all the time, I don't get it. I love, it's cool. Intellectually, I hear your words, and it's thrilling. But I still kind of don't believe it. I love you, man. So, thank you. And what I want, I don't need to know, but you're in your 20s?
No, I'm 15.
You're 15?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. No, that you watched it in a second wave. Do you see what I mean? The show was made 20, you watched it in school.
Yeah.
I thought I loved you before, now I really love it. All right, so what I want to do is if you guys become the next great generation, then we will have gotten somewhere. If you change the world. So thank you. Gosh, thank you. Cool.
I have to tell you a little story. My wife Jennifer and sister Tina, who are here, spent a Halloween evening with Bill at his house over in Studio City, and he had a guy with a clipboard counting 1,700.
Steve, my old buddy Steve.
Yeah, his buddy Steve. 1,700 kids in 3 hours, and he's on his knees handing candy out with his little Bill Nye and the goggles and the lab coat, and of course they knew he lived there. You know, they're lined up down the sidewalk. Yes, it's.
But you guys, so 1 year I wasn't the science guy for Halloween. Halloween is a holiday that makes no sense based on tradition. But I was a rocker. I had the same wig from the Static Electricity show, and I had the black, Kiss-style face paint. And kids recognize me anyway. Why don't you? I thought we were the science guy. What are you doing? So I just don't fight it. I just don't fight it anymore. Just bring it on. It's cool.
And his buddy Steve was dressed up as him so he could take bathroom breaks once in a while.
That's right, yeah. Steve. So Steve worked on he put my microphone on me when he was a floor director at the NBC affiliate in Seattle, King TV. Seattle's in King County. And he's been a friend of mine, 30 years.
Okay,
great.
Bill Nye, I'm a huge fan of yours, and I love you to death. Unfortunately, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. And I think you've done the people of Kentucky a huge disservice by not defending Kentuckians when you put up a picture of a map about Kentucky. In the only sense, only sense is that very few people support the ark getting built. Very
I know. So this is an exciting time.
Exactly. So so that's just my first statement. My question to you can come back to this. Come back to this later. My question to you, and I fully support your stance on GMO, and I appreciate you saying that.
I may be wrong.
You may be wrong, but the people need to appreciate that as well. And the only thing to note is, when are you and Neil deGrasse going to have a debate on GMOs?
So a couple things. Let's keep in mind that Neil is a dear friend of mine. I was at Thanksgiving at his house, at his apartment. And he's into it, but he's not that into it. And I did go to the IQ squared debate in New York, where Rob Fraley was, and two people from the Union of Concerned Scientists were there, and they got their butts kicked. The corporate people just wailed on my people. So Neil would probably not get involved in that. And just one other thing I want you guys to understand. I am not fluent in French. I'm not a francophone. My ancestors were French, but you have a Corvette. Okay, it has an E on the end. And French people, just like their furniture, just keep adding letters, just add stuff. So if it's got an E on the end, then you don't hear the E. If it doesn't have an E on the end, like a Chevrolet, then you don't hear the T. So it's DeGrasse, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Just something that kind of drives me crazy. And I don't speak French, but I just hear it. So no, he and I would probably not debate GMOs. But stay tuned, you guys. I may go to St. Louis and get my ass kicked. This guy may just show me that I'm totally wrong about everything. And I will say, as a scientist, I bring it on, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, we're going to take...
let's just cut the lines off right here and just get it done. No, finish all these questions. We'll just get it done. No more questions in the line. We'll just get all these done. Go, Michael.
Okay, I'm here not to make a question, but to ask you a favor. When you have the meeting with the guy from Monsanto, can you please ask them to develop a cubic banana? Just to shut up, comfort once and for all.
Okay. Oh, because the evolution, it's the perfect thing. Yeah,
cubic banana.
Exactly.
The banana is perfect. And keep in mind, bananas are radioactive. Like calcium, man.
Let's do two more on each side and then cut
Well, then, but there's only three on that side. Come on.
All right.
Go ahead. Seattle Mariners, right on.
Heather, I'm a huge fan of both of you. I'm going to read off my phone, but you brought up the intelligence squared. My question is kind of based on a debate that you were in, Michael, regarding if science refutes God. And your partner was Lawrence Krauss, and the opponent to this, one of the opponents, Dinesh D'Souza, said that God must exist because since she is so prevalent in our society, that's actually proof of her existence. So you guys countered by saying that it would be crazy to suggest that humans don't have a tendency to be religious, and that would violate evidence of reality. So it's not proof of God's existence, but rather just proof that humans have a tendency. So Knowing
Question.
Sorry. Knowing about what you guys said about the natural tendency to be religious, do you think we will ever get to a point in society where religion will be 100% abolished?
Well, it's not impossible. European countries have plummeted their rates of religiosity from something like what we have here, like 90 to 95% in pre-World War II, to in some northern European countries like Scandinavia, Denmark, so forth. The rates are less than half. 20%, 30%.
Full disclosure, read Michael's new book, The Moral Arc. Not full disclosure, shameless plug.
The full
read Michael's new book where he talks about the arc of religion going away, being replaced by...
Well, I don't know if it'll be 100%.
Humanism will kind of replace it?
Yeah, I don't know if it ever could be 100%. But on the one level, we don't care if it doesn't influence anything. If it doesn't influence politics...
Yeah, this is what I say in my book, changing it
Would that be, is this the one?
Changing it back to me. 20 hardcovers in a carton. In general, I have no problem with anybody's religion. You know, people get tremendous community out of it. They share tables, they eat together, they get a lot of, they feel good being part of the religion. It's just, the Earth's not 6,000 years old. It's just, I'm sorry, man, no matter
The reason
what.
I ask is because
we got to keep going.
Okay. Yeah, all right.
Thank you. I was just going to ask, what's some advice you can give younger people that grow up in religious environments, something that can help them motivate them to critically think and whatnot?
So were you brought up in a religious environment? To answer a question with a question.
Yeah,
read my book. Buy a carton.
I did. I read the whole book.
I love you, man.
Give them to all your family members.
I read your book. I brought it, for you to sign and everything. But I grew up in Baptist and Catholic school, so that was a hostile environment, to be asked questions and
So are you okay or not?
No, yeah, I'm fine. I was asking for advice you can give to other people who may be watching this.
What I say is, just remember when you talk to somebody about your beliefs and his or her beliefs that might be religious, don't expect to change their minds like that. I guess that's the first thing.
Okay.
It takes, you got to be exposed to that, just like ghosts and haunted houses and horoscopes. You got to be exposed to the skeptical point of view many times before you get it. There's my advice.
Thank you.
Chip away.
So what about
Are we adding people to this line?
No, we got to cut it up. So we just have these two and those two, and then that's it.
Okay, all right.
Because people want to get their books signed.
I know. I thought we were.
There was 20 in a carton. It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
So, what about the claim that on game day, the outside temperature would have dropped the pressure in that ball by 1.5 pounds?
I'm going to do that test diligently, but just looking at PV equals nRT, it didn't look like it couldn't go down nearly that fast. It's 15%. No, the other claim was that you warm it up when you exercise it, when you squeeze it. You do warm it, but it's still a closed system. So once it gets back to the same temperature, no, they were cheating, okay? Yeah.
Hello. So it's clear that in a lot of fields of science there are an unequal number of men and women, and I'm just wondering if you think that there is some discouragement for young women and young girls. Yeah.
But the longest journey starts with but a single step. And the key to our future, half the humans are girls and women, so half the scientists should be women. All right, because science is the best idea we've ever had. Now, I remember my mom could not get an American Express card because she was Mrs. Nye instead of her own self. She was somebody's wife. My dad's, that's right. My dad. And so she had a master's degree at that point. She went on to get a doctorate, my mom. And this is about 1973. She could not get a American Express card. And she was furious. And she marched in the Equal Rights Amendment parade, and she told us she threw her bra in the fire. I don't know if she really did. But there's a fire in front of the U.S. Capitol. Anyway, it wasn't that long ago, and a lot of progress has been made. But we also have a long way to go. And let me just also say, because I think about this nowadays, my mom, along with that, would tell you whether or not whether women could wear cocktail dresses at black tie events, yes. But at white tie events, women must wear gowns that reach the floor. And this was important to her. At the same time, she wanted an American Express card. So we don't want to change everything. But that's something we're going to chip away at. And by the way, education, raising the standard of women and girls through education is, in my view, the best way to reduce the world's population so that we have wanted children at a higher standard of living. And then, while this is obvious, you know, yeah, right on, Bill, getting it done is complicated. So fight the good fight, my friend. Go get them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, penultimate.
Thank you.
Second to last.
Yeah, I was recently criticized by a very good friend of mine for posting and liking things online about pro-science and skepticism. She's very devout Roman Catholic.
Roman Catholic, they're all about evolution. The Pope came out and said, evolve, people.
What advice would you give for promoting science and skepticism in a way that is not offensive, or at least not so offensive that it will shut down communication?
I got a feeling it's the way you're going about it. Because the Roman Catholic Church they got an astronomer at the Vatican, and the Pope just came out saying evolution's a real deal. So in that one example, I'm not sure. You stumped me.
Well, one way you do it is you do it with good cheer and humor and respect, but you stick with the facts and you don't back down from reality. That's how you do it.
Okay.
There.
Thank you.
Don't back down from reality. Yes, sir.
Bill, you're the man.
I love you, man.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on space tourism, and if we colonize Mars, would you go?
Okay. Space tourism is going to be fun. We just had a huge setback. You know, Virgin Galactic had a crash, apparently avoidable, but it's always avoidable. It's always something. So, I mean, if there's a market for it, you know, bring it on. I just want it to be environmentally responsible. Don't want to be burning old tires just for the sake of it. But I think it will give everybody, literally, a world view that will change them. According to all astronauts, once you see the Earth from space, man, it changes you. And so I'm very supportive of that. And I mentioned a member of the planetary said, check out ISS above, where you can see cameras that are orbiting the Earth, and keep it on your television all day instead of, you know, whatever you have, a picture of a fuel log, or or a picture of a fish tank, a movie of a fish tank. Check out International Space Station above. And then an outpost on Mars. I would go there in a second. Well, 2 years or whatever. This would be like an outpost in Antarctica. And this will be a good thing to finish up on, because we're in California. Does everybody know the state motto of California? Eureka, I found it. So these European guys come over the hill, and there's salmon coming up the Sacramento River longer than your arm, right? Because of previous people, the orange trees are like weeds. And it gets so out of hand. It got so out of hand, the rocks are made of gold. Like, that's how crazy it was. I found it. This is so great. Let's move to California. Okay, when you go to Mars, it is not like that. And this romantic idea, I'm going to go live on Mars, and I'm going to retire on Mars, I'm going to die on Mars. Dude, you will die on Mars. You open the spacecraft door right away, you'll notice I can't breathe. Yeah, so if you really want a colony on Mars, go to Antarctica, the dry valleys, not the shore where the birds are swimming and the krill and the whales and stuff. Go over there. It hasn't rained or snowed in over a century, and on a summer day at noon, it's 20 below. And do that for a couple years, and take all the scuba tanks you need to breathe for 2 years, and see what you think. However, a scientific outpost on Mars to look for signs of life, that could, dare I say it, change the world! Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Michael.
That was great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You can line up here to get your book signed. Give us a minute to get the book table set up.
Michael.
Okay, all right.